In order to help you really care for chickens, let's get a baseline understanding of how they work. Once you understand their anatomy a little better, you can use your knowledge to read your birds and know if they're feeling well, happy, or if something isn't quite right. This is the comb. This fleshy growth at the top of a chicken's head comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes, from flower-like fingers to bizarre prongs to tiny little nubs that barely stick out from the feathers. This buff Orpington has what's called a single comb, which can be closely held, like hers, or so big and floppy that it looks like a bad toupee. The bigger the comb, the more prone to frostbite the hen is. Conversely, a small, close-held comb is good for a cold climate. The fleshy bits that hang under the chicken's chin are called wattles. The chicken can often be calmed if you gently stroke them. The parts that stick out behind the eye are called earlobes, although they're not actually attached to the chicken's ears. Often, although there are exceptions, the earlobes will tell you what color egg a hen will lay. Red earlobes usually make brown eggs. White earlobes usually make white eggs. Let's start with the crop. This is a bag, basically, inside the bird that holds food until it can be processed. This is the first place food will go after the chicken swallows it. A chicken who has eaten a lot will often have a visibly bulging crop, and you can actually see it hanging behind her feathers. At the base of the chicken's tail is a little nub hidden among the feathers. You'd never know it was there unless you looked for it. This is called the oil gland. When a bird preens, she draws oil from this gland and spreads it all over her feathers to keep them clean and in good condition. You'll want to remove this when you butcher a bird. The wings on a chicken are surprisingly short and small. They're really not meant for any sort of flight, more just to get up to a perch, to get down from a perch and keep their balance, or to keep chicks warm. Here's the chicken's vent, sometimes also called the cloaca. It's basically the all-purpose hole for a bird. Both droppings and eggs come out of here, and roosters and hens need to touch cloacas to fertilize eggs. The vent on this hen is wide and moist looking as she's currently actively laying eggs. The legs are technically called shanks. They can come in many different colors and are always covered with scales and look somewhat like dinosaur legs. The feet curl up when they are at rest and are also covered with scales. The toenails are thick and strong, as chickens constantly are scratching in the dirt with their feet to find tasty tidbits of food. The rooster has a few notable sexual differences to notice. First off, he's obviously a lot bigger. Roosters are usually at least a pound heavier than hens of the same breed, if not more. He'll also have much flashier plumage. No matter what the breed, if you squint hard enough, you can still see some of that red junglefowl fancy feathering coming through. The spurs are sharp points that emerge from the rooster's shanks, and they are the most fearsome part of a rooster. They're really the only part of a chicken that could actually hurt you. Spurs are made out of the same material as your fingernails. They're made out of keratin, and while they aren't bones, they are hard and sharp. The rooster will use his spurs to both defend the flock from a threat and fight with a rival rooster. The rooster has a large comb and wattles, and they're used as a mating display. The bigger and flashier the wattles and comb, the more healthy and virile the rooster that holds them. The comb can change dramatically in size through the year. It'll be at its biggest and fleshiest and reddest during the spring when it's time to impress the ladies. In the fall and winter, when there's no eggs to fertilize, it'll shrink and be a little less prone to frostbite. Though you don't need to have a veterinarian's understanding of the internal anatomy of a chicken, there are a few inner bits that are important to be aware of. Let's start with the crop. This is a bag, basically, inside the bird that holds food until it can be processed. This is the first place food will go after the chicken swallows it. After food has entered the crop, it is slowly deposited into the next organ, which is called the gizzard. Obviously, chickens don't have teeth, so they'll actually eat rocks and store them in this super muscly organ. Whole seeds and food go in, and then the contractions of the gizzard, combined with the grit and stones stored inside, allow the chicken to internally chew its food. On the hens, the oviduct is another fascinating feature. This is where eggs start. They begin as tiny little yolks, basically the size of a head of a pin, and then, like an assembly line, they travel through the oviduct in a line, growing larger and larger until they are at full size. Believe it or not, the eggshell is actually the last part of the egg to be formed. Take time both handling and observing your chickens to understand these fascinating parts of their makeup. The more you see how the beautifully designed bits of the bird fit together, the more this humble barnyard hen will really become an amazing work of art.